Welcome to Season 2 of Build and Grow, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to new models in these times, your story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations from some of the newest trendsetters in business and stalwarts of the ecosystem. Tune in to power your next phase of growth and business continuity. Welcome to Season 2 of Build and Grow, Money Matters, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to newer models in these times, Your Story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations from some of the newest trendsetters in the business and stalwarts of the ecosystem to help businesses power their next phase of growth and business continuity. I'm Deepthi Nair, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest for today's episode, Mr. Saahil Goel. Sahil is the CEO and co-founder of Shiprocket. It's an AI-powered logistics technology platform. It derives efficiency in India's e-commerce logistics by connecting online retailers with logistics providers along with supply chain to enable end-to-end solutions. As CEO, Sahil takes lead in developing and practicing unconventional solutions from the ground up. Along with overall management of the company, he actively heads product strategy, user experience, and ground growth initiatives. Before co-founding Shiprocket, Sahil was working as a technology and process consultant for SDLC Partners and was also part of the founders team of Caspers Consulting. Welcome to Money Matters, Sahil.
Thank you.
So my first question, Sahil, is, this pandemic has accelerated e-commerce and online shopping like never before. How has Shiprocket leveraged this opportunity to grow?
So I think there have been several changes, in the market with the lockdown and then the unlock as well, right? I think one of the biggest things that changed both on the retailer as well as the consumer side was that a lot of people realized that the physical channel, which everybody assumed to be, for a given, was not given, right? Because consumers suddenly didn't have a choice. They had many people converted into first time buyers, whether it was for grocery or pharmacy or even for lifestyle products or essentials. And many retailers, I think for the first time kind of saw that their primary source of income could just go away, right? And I think India's had digital a long time coming, right? We've been talking about it for years. There's been a lot of work in the ecosystem to push this forward. I think in many ways, this was a forced adoption on both ends of the transaction. And, my estimate is that we probably did business worth 2 years in like 6 months, and that's sort of what happened, where people just very quickly adopted this new way of buying and selling. So given that Shiprocket powers shipping for our customers who are typically websites and D2C and social sellers, by connecting them with logistics carriers, this was a very interesting time for us because while the overall e-commerce market obviously grew, the whole independent digital retail market, if I can call it that, grew much faster, right?
Yeah.
And we basically were already at the right place at the right time to some extent. And we had built a business that was very scalable in terms of digital acquisition of retailers, digital onboarding, digital growth, etc. So it was challenging in many ways, and we can kind of get into that. But we were sort of positioned rightly to take advantage of what happened as a result of the lockdown.
During the lockdown period, logistic companies also faced a lot of, severe downturn, right? Whether it was in terms of manpower or other aspects there also. How did you overcome these challenges and adapt to the new normal?
See, as a platform, we act as a virtual logistics layer, right? Where we have a partner network of more than 15 carriers, who work with us, and we in turn aggregate their capacity and their manpower on our platform, and then make it available to retailers of any size, right? Um, that being said, the initial part of the lockdown, it was basically just shut down. Like everything just got shut down for a few days, and then slowly there was some clarity on essential items being allowed. But the policies and the actual implementation were far, very, very far from each other, because a lot of people on the ground, the actual manpower who was going to move the products, were not there. Many people were trying to get back home. The demand itself wasn't there, right? It was like 1/10 or even less. So for the logistics companies, it was an extremely challenging time to figure out that, well, it's a chicken and egg, because if they don't service the demand that was there, they end up losing out even on that part of the revenue. But if they do, they need to be able to service a network where they know they would have to sort of lose a lot of money and operate at less than capacity, right? With that, the problem got compounded by the whole zoning mechanism that the government put into play. We had red, orange, green, we had containment zones, and that fluctuated almost every day, right? So it was a pretty volatile period for everybody. On the one hand, we had all of these retailers and buyers trying to do something. A lot of our retailers pivoted from selling ethnic sarees to selling face masks, because that's what was allowed and that's what people were going to buy. And on the other hand, you had this whole sort of logistics infrastructure that was just like reeling under all of this uncertainty. So definitely a challenging time. I think I can't say that uh, we did too much to fix it. I think we just did what we could, which was basically try and optimize using data, try and optimize using workflows, try and optimize using our technology. And given that we are a layer on top of multiple carriers, one of the things that we were able to bring to retailers was that we were able to at least bring a somewhat seamless experience, saying that, what, if this pin code location isn't working with carrier one, it is possibly working with carrier two. So at least if you had an order there, that you booked basis that serviceability yesterday, you don't have to cancel the order because you can still ship it using somebody else, right? So we were able to provide a somewhat seamless experience to our merchants. We helped them navigate the various zones. So we did that mapping and we kind of let them see beforehand so they could decide whether they wanted to ship the order or not, right? And yeah, I mean, we had to kind of obviously change our internal teams. Everyone was double, triple hatting. We were trying to do sort of, we did a complete reorg, in fact, for like 3 months, where different people just changed roles for that period, right? Because we had this huge surge in new customers, right? We had to figure out a way to absorb that with the same strength of people. We had suddenly gone into work from home, which wasn't happening prior to the lockdown, and we haven't been geared up as a company to do that, right? So I think a lot of changes, a lot of interesting time now that I think back, and in hindsight, obviously, we think we did a fairly good job at managing the situation as far as we could for ourselves, and more than that, for our retailers.
You talked about that a lot of layers were there, right? You had to manage, you had to like, and you talked about different zones, etc. No, that means it's such a headache, like it's a nightmare, logistics nightmare, to so to speak. And that's where technology plays a role. So how did you leverage that technology bit in ensuring that there was a smooth, kind of pipeline there?
See, like I said, we have direct integrations with all of our carriers, and we are able to get visibility in real time on what's happening at their ground locations in terms of whether a location is accessible at the moment, whether they're going to do how is the performance of a location, is it getting choked, right? Because we are tracking all of that data. So using this data, we are actually able to predict to a great degree of predict which carrier should be used for which transaction to our merchants, thereby preventing them a latent effect of saying, "Oh, I could have sent it through, carrier one instead of sending it through carrier two because it's now gotten stuck." Right? So by doing that, we are actually preempting a lot of what's going to happen, and some of it is actually just near real time. Like if some location suddenly got shut today, at least the merchant knows that it's no longer available and they can stop accepting orders on their website. We provide a direct integration to our merchant's website as well. So on their website, when consumers also try to place an order, it would very clearly tell the consumer that we're sorry that we cannot accept an order to this particular location, right? Please try
Mhm.
back next week or something like that, right? So that really takes care of a lot of operational headache that our merchants would have had to face, had they not had this sort of this kind of integration that we had to quickly build during the pandemic. Other than that, as I said, just the sheer volatility of the situation, where things were going on and off all the time, having a layer that sat on top of it to provide a single API or a single dashboard, where you could sort of see an aggregate view of all logistics in India, really helped our merchants to kind of make better decisions, decide, what they wanted to do with either running, maintaining, not running, growing their business, depending on what the situation was. Because a large part of this is information, right? Action is something that comes second, but not having the information itself is a problem, right? Because many of these merchants are really small. Many of them are one person companies, right? They don't have teams to rely on to say, okay, and we had to kind of be that team for them during that time.
That brings me to this question also, like how did you help these merchants, right? You said you provided them with a dashboard, etc., but they were also going through their own challenges. If you could share some anecdote or something about how was this interaction with your merchants, and they are all small and medium businesses, right? Many of them may not probably be as digitally savvy as you guys were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we did several things. First of all, as we started seeing this inflection of first time sellers, we started noticing a very different kind of flow, right, coming into the platform, where earlier we would get, I wouldn't say seasoned, but small, but people who had experience, right, selling online. But these were guys that had offline shops, right? So these were sellers who would call us and say that, I've signed up, now what do I do? Right? And we've never had that question coming before, because people who were coming to us, they would know, like she would know that I need to click here now, and because she had used it before somewhere, or she had sent packets online, so she understood what was going to happen. But not with this. These sellers were very new. So I think we had to very quickly create a ton of content, right? We had to very quickly create a full sort of a brand new team that was only tasked with onboarding sellers, right? Which was never something that department didn't exist in our business up until this happened, because we realized that, oh, we need to tell people what to do, they are not getting it, right? On the second hand, I think while we act as a fulfillment partner, or a fulfillment technology for our merchants, what's unique about India is that India is still cash on delivery heavy, right? So nearly 50% plus, even after the pandemic, right, is still cash on delivery on the platform, especially in the long tail. And as a partner or as a technology player, while we help a lot of our merchants with fulfillment, we are also helping them be cash on delivery enabled, which means that we're collecting the cash with the help of our courier networks, and then we're reconciling it into our merchants' bank accounts, right? So we're actually a point of sale in some ways for many businesses, right? We've got businesses that are 100% cash on delivery, right, who don't operate digital payments at all because they're so early in their life cycles. And during the pandemic, they were it was a huge decision with us, saying that, do we, there were times we wouldn't get paid on time, from our carriers, and then it was really up to us to think that, do we do like garbage in garbage out, which is, if I get then I pay, or do we take the high road, take the risk, and say that, no, well, I'm a larger company, right? I can probably absorb the risk, but a lot of my merchants probably can't, right? Because if they don't get paid, they probably can't buy the next stock. And if they can't buy the next stock, that means they can't sell it. And that means that they might not be around a month later, right? And that's, not only is it bad for the business, it just doesn't sort of, it's not at all something that we wanted on our conscience, to be honest, because it was a bad time, right? Everything was blowing up. And I think we took it on ourselves to kind of take that risk, saying that, no, I think we need to keep our merchants cash flows going, and we have to take the risk with our carriers. We're the bigger parties here, and then we need to be able to use our leverage and help our merchants kind of stick with us. And interestingly enough, that got us so much loyalty with so many of our merchants. Many of them later on kind of came back and said, you guys, it was the worst time for our business, and you were there to support us. And I think people take that kind of stuff a long way home, right? So that was one sort of learning from that decision that I think really helped us kind of instill that relationship, with our merchants during the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting, and to know that, Shiprocket is also focused on, is focused on direct to consumer retailers who sell through social media channels and websites, right? What are some of the new trends that you're witnessing in this D2C space? Are there more retailers turning to social media as a primary channel rather than, e-commerce websites?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very interesting market, and it's been, I think it's been growing for the last 2 3 years now at a significant pace. And I think the last 1 year, 2020, has been where it's like just sort of exploded, right? Because uh, I think a lot of people from selling offline now had to suddenly find a new place to sell. Building their own website on an e-commerce platform is still a daunting task for many people, no matter how simple a lot of our shopping cart partners make it. But for a stay-at-home housewife in, let's say, a tier 3 city, it's still not easy, because it's still got 7 8 things that one needs to know before they can even start, right? But snapping a picture of 5 products and putting it on Instagram or forwarding it on WhatsApp, and then accepting payments either via cash on delivery through a platform like Shiprocket or via like a Paytm is pretty straightforward, right? So if you think about it, India has been such an innovation bed for stuff like this. I remember we literally had people, like I would get forwards from friends saying, here's how people did e-commerce during this period, right? There would be a PDF catalog of products, right? This is like a bakery I'm talking about, and a link to a Google form, right? So literally that's it, right? That's e-commerce. And then you've got this link and a PDF that would just get forwarded, and it would clearly say that all orders placed by 6 p.m. will ship them tomorrow, and it's only cash on delivery, right? So you think about the simplicity, but then
Yeah.
think about the user experience, right? It's so simple, like it's in your phone, you're anyway inside WhatsApp, you click it, you place your order, whatever, fill out this form, right? And that's it. You don't that's nothing else to do, right? So I think the sometimes these things are not apparent. Like no one would go and say, oh, let's do e-commerce this way and this is how it's going to work. But when it happens, you can look back and say, oh wow, this was so obvious. Like why didn't somebody think about it, right? And I think that's what social commerce or social media allows as a model. And I think the other important thing is also the consumer behavior, right? In many Southeast Asian countries, I give an example. In Bangladesh, social commerce is bigger than horizontal B2C marketplace commerce, right? Because that's just how the consumers are geared up to kind of think and purchase. In India, obviously, that's not the case, but there's clearly sort of examples of how this can be pretty prevalent, because the consumers are more accepting of it. The consumers are, we're adding millions of consumers literally every month, right, that are getting wired on uh, with data. I think we've got 700 million consumers today that have data in their phones, right? All thanks to sort of data getting cheaper in the last couple of years. There's just that many more people going online. And, for them going online, the first thing that they do, the internet for a large part of this population, isn't going to Google and making a search, right? For a large part of this population, is just WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That's their internet, because that's where they get their jokes, that's where they get their family, that's where they're going to do their shopping, so I think it's something to think about, which is very unique to India. And I have a very strong belief that this whole segment is really poised for a very interesting time in the coming years. And that being said, I think I would say nearly 50 to 60% of our user base is people who sell in an unorganized fashion, most of which is selling through Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram, or some combination of the three, right? And that is where a large part of the next micro D2C is getting born. And then of course we've got the sort of D2C explosion itself, right? We are like, I talk to my friends, and just to do a dipstick, because Facebook targets you sometimes, because if you're seeing a lot of D2C, you might just see more. So just to make sure that it's not just my feed that's showing this to me, there's actually like 4 to 5 times the number of products that are showing up. Really neat packaging, newer concepts, newer stories, mostly targeting FMCG or clothing, or like a super niche item. It could be like, oh, breakfast drink, and that's it. That's a niche. Now you've got like 5 people trying to create brilliant products there that are appealing to the new consumer. Where majority of our country is like between 25 and 35, right? At least the shopping population. So there is bound to be more and more and more consumerism, right? And I think it's just sort of it's a very interesting time to be doing anything around D2C or social commerce, because it's sort of at this really cool intersection of saying, oh, digital is forced on us. There's just that much more pent up, I guess, I don't want to call it demand, but that much more pent up entrepreneurship, right, in the market. And now the tools are accessible and the consumers are there. So I think the next 2 3 years in India will be very, very exciting for this space.
I have a confession to make in this period. I have become a big Instagram shopper,
Good.
and sometimes it's been and Shiprocket mails come to me saying that it has been yeah, delivered, or it's out for delivery.
I hope
So
it was
yeah.
all good experiences. So
So in terms of, like, you talked about the simplicity of social commerce, right? Like, how has it been for you in the smaller towns, in not the metros of Bangalore's, Delhi's, and Mumbai's, but how was it for you? Been what trends are you seeing in smaller towns?
yeah, so it's a great question, Deepti, because we actually saw a large part of this new inflection come from the smaller towns, right? It was not so much the actually sellers and buyers both, right? That we saw in this last, I don't know, 8 9 month period, or 6 month period rather, post unlock. That whole upswing, majority of it was from smaller cities, right? Because I think that's where people anyway, either they were near manufacturing clusters, because that's where the goods are. That's where either trading or manufacturing clusters. Uh, or it was just sort of prominent towns, which generally are populated. And like a year back, if we had if Kanpur contributed, I don't remember the exact number, but let's just say if Kanpur contributed 3% to my overall last mile, or 5% to our overall last mile, in this period it as a split it grew to like 6%, right? Or 7% in some cases when we looked at the cities. So there was just that much more happening there, right? As a share of the overall pie. And overall, if I look at the platform today, nearly 60% of our, or maybe more, it's more like 65% today. If I leave the metros, basically, right? So 65% of our volumes are going into non-metros for delivery, right? And this number has been increasing year on year. It used to be like 30% 3 years back, right? And then every year I'm kind of seeing a significant change in how this is sort of spanning out. Again, I can't comment on what's happening for like the traditional e-commerce model, which is the marketplace model. But in the long tail model or the D2C model, this is definitely a trend, because these markets are untapped, right? A lot of these markets rely on social behavior. Like if their friend sends them a link on WhatsApp, they're much more likely to go and make the purchase than if it's like an ad they see or whatever, right? So I think uh, uh, I mean, and that's not the only reason why this is more prevalent. I think there's several more which we can get into at some point, but largely there is a shift towards smaller towns for sure. And I think it is all to do with people getting access. They just didn't have access before, and now people have internet, and that's I think a big deal in pushing this forward.
Now, Shiprocket has witnessed a 182% increase in the number of active sellers in this period. Tell us, how were you able to achieve this phenomenal growth? And, what are some of the key areas of focus for you?
Yeah, I think basically what we saw is the moment things got unlocked, 2 3 things happened. One, the cost of marketing just became 1/3, because there was just that much less for brands and offline brands to market. So all of the digital platforms just became like super cheap, which meant that we could invest the same amount of money and hopefully get the same number of leads, right? Which is a bit of a linear, expected behavior in such a time. And it's supposed to be temporary because it should go away over time, right? As things kind of normalize. The other big trend we saw was just the sheer number of signups. Like there was just, it was crazy. Like the search results went, like the search number of search queries just increased, right? Which has nothing to do with us. We were just there. It's just that there were just that many more people who now were looking for COD service or easy shipping or whatever it is, to be able to kind of move their goods. And I think what we really saw, which was interesting, was our conversion rates. Which was a little bit mind-boggling. Where if earlier out of 100 people, say 10 people were signing up, 10 people were converting into an actual shipping customer. During this period, we saw 17, 18 out of 100 people converting, right? Which was just crazy for us in terms of, so we had more people converting to shippers. We had more signups in general because the market was kind of, there were just that many more people searching, right? For how to easily ship their products, which led to this exponential kind of growth for us. And honestly, like I said earlier in our discussion, initially we weren't ready for it because we've been a fully digital model where we don't talk to customers when they sign up for a large part, right? It's a self-service model. It's a simple to use mobile app. You download it, you put money into the wallet, and you start shipping. It's not very complicated, right? But now we had this sort of new kind of users who needed to be, they were like, well, I've put the money, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And they just make the shipment. But I realized, no, it's not that simple, right? For many of these sellers. So I think from a scale perspective, I think we had to ready ourselves as a team, and we've added nearly 100 plus people, right, in the last 6 months to be able to deal with sort of this sudden growth, let's call it, right? I mean, it was a strange journey because literally we had 2 months where it was like we were worried about, whether we'd be around because we were at like 5% of our overall business. And then within 2 months of unlock, it was like, oh, we are suddenly at 200% of our business. And we just didn't
Wow.
have people to kind of take care of that, right? So I think very, very interesting to see that kind of inflection. And from a scale perspective, of course, technology scale is one part of it. How do you create the UX? How do you kind of, do you use vernacular languages at some parts of your emails, etc.? We did a ton of training videos. We built a ton of training videos in Hindi, in other languages, and we were just trying to do a lot, in this time to kind of make sure that we were still efficient as a company, because you can't keep adding people till the end of eternity. And the other part obviously was just sort of getting in the right people and doing it very, very quickly, right? I'm sure we powered a few bad experiences too for our merchants during this time because we just couldn't pick up phones, right? Small things like that where people would call us and we just couldn't answer phones because there were not enough people to pick them up. So I think that was a bit of a challenge for us to very quickly try and ramp up to support the business. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's I'm glad we did because the growth has lasted. The growth hasn't gone away. It's still kind of still growing.
Yeah, it's still growing, going to grow now more and more. How was the festive season for you guys, and how are you looking to expand further now on the back of new capital that you've raised in May?
Yeah, I think the festive season, and I don't know how the overall market indexes it, but it was okay. I mean, we've seen growth as much as 30%, 25% in previous years. This year it was okay. I mean, it was not as much as we had experienced in the past years. But the good thing is that before and after the festive season, our growth continues, which tells us that we're kind of trending off the market. Because technically, or at least last year, we would typically see a slump after the sort of festive growth, and this year we still haven't really seen that, right? And again, it's hard to exactly pinpoint because there's just that many newer kind of sellers and that many more offline retailers who are trying to sell online. So a little bit of the trend is gotten mixed up this year. So hard to comment that intelligently. But yes, we saw some growth during the festive times. Um, and from a overall, sort of focus perspective, or what we are finding as a very unique opportunity for this segment is actually to kind of create better experiences or create hassle-free experiences, right? And one of the ways to do that is to partner with a bunch of warehousing locations. So we've launched our fulfillment service. It's called Shiprocket Fulfillment, and we are live now in 5 cities. And the idea is that we basically take off the hassle for many of our retailers of the actual packing, storing, managing returns, shipping. We take away that entire process and say that just give us your goods and we'll do it for you. And while this is a very sort of old concept in logistics, it generally was true for enterprises. What
Mm.
we've done is we've taken that model, and similar to how Amazon does it for their own marketplace, we've built the same model for this D2C community where you could be doing 5 orders a day, and that's fine because you pay per order. You don't pay any rentals, or you don't kind of get a space that you pay for. There is no fixed cost basically, right? It's all elastic. So if you did 5 orders, you pay for 5 orders. That's it. You don't have to worry about your risk about saying, well, is it worth it, right? And generally works out cheaper. And especially in these sort of pandemic times, it takes a large operational hassle away, because now you're not worried about your manpower coming into work, or if somebody's getting COVID, or your operations center suffering, and what is the best way to optimize. Because for a lot of people this is new, right? Because operations will, efficiency can come from how you store your goods. Do you pile them together? How do you process your orders? And many sellers don't want to learn it, right? Because for them it's just saying that, well, I only want to focus on my core business, which is retailing, marketing, sourcing, right, branding, and customers. I don't want to focus on this nuanced logistics supply chain thing, right? So you guys do it for us. And I think that opportunity kind of, I mean, it had been with us for a while, but I think it became more and more prevalent during this lockdown and post lockdown, where many of our retailers do not want to deal with the actual operational hassle of moving these goods by themselves, right? So that's a big focus area for us, in the coming year. Uh, something where we're investing a lot of technology resource and time in.
Sahil, this Money Matters show, we are talking here on Money Matters show. What is your relationship with money like?
See, I'll be fairly honest, right? I think money is important, and this may sound a little philosophical, and I guess that's what the question is, largely, right? I think it's important, but it's not everything, for sure, right? I mean, I'll tell you, I get sometimes, when we onboard new employees, they ask me that, when you launch your company, what was the why did you do it? Did you do it because you wanted to build a lot of wealth? And I said, no, I quit I used to make 100K in the US, and I quit that along with my wife to be jobless for like 4 years, or not jobless, but to be without a salary for like 4 years. That definitely can't be the reason why we did this. So clearly, I'm not chasing money, right? But it's important too. That's something I learned a little bit later as I, uh, you know, got more responsibilities in life, as I became a father of two, etc., where you realize that, well, you need it. You can't be an idealistic person and say that, no, I don't need it, because you could say that for yourself. And that too, I believe, you need a very strong spiritual bent, to say that, or to actually believe that, right? So I do think it's a balanced kind of a commodity for me, where I feel that it is important, right? You need it to live a comfortable life, or but at the same time, I don't think it changes anything, to be honest, right? All of the stuff that matters in life, whether it's relationships, or feeling happy, or kind of feeling successful, or whatever it is, I don't think that's linked to money, to be honest, because it's not really. I haven't seen that work any at all ever, no matter what people feel and say.
Sahil, as an entrepreneur, what are your expectations from banks and lenders?
I'll answer that as a platform that powers the long tail of retailers in India, because somewhere, we work with 50,000 active merchants a month, right? And there's a fair sense of, we understand fairly well where these merchants are placed, and how they are utilizing money, right? Which is the essential part. I do believe that, lending is still at the very beginning, though I know there have been ups and downs in the a couple of times now, right? I actually think that for this new segment, because this is a, like, how there was this talk about unbanked, when a lot of virtual banks started up, and people were chasing consumers, saying, well, now you have your mobile app based banking, and only mobile app based banking, basically, right? I think in a similar way, there is this whole segment of millions of sellers that are not consumers, they are not traditional businesses, right? So it's almost like the infrastructure isn't there
Yeah.
to kind of do anything for them. They're stuck, right? They don't have access to formal capital in the way an established private limited company would. They don't have access to capital in the way a consumer would, right? So they're like in between, like they're and they're left high and dry. They have no choice to do this other than going to like sort of unorganized, borrowing. And I think that's a not only is it a huge opportunity, I think it's that's where a lot of the next leg of retail is going to happen. So I think that's a segment that banks and lenders should definitely think about, and there are several ways to get into that, basically by going after people that aggregate these people, right? uh, there's a bunch of new apps that have made it to their way, helping with accounting or bookkeeping and simple stuff like that, but they're aggregating these sellers to the tune of millions. We're aggregating hundreds of thousands of these sellers on our platform. And I think in the next year we are definitely going to see, some people going after this segment, because it's like a completely new opportunity, right? And that would, again, it's a very sort of very focused ask, but that's what I can think about from my perspective, which I think is I would urge. I think it's a huge opportunity too for a lot of the banks and lenders.
Thank you so much, Sahil, for sharing your thoughts on this and giving us this time. Really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me, Deepthi. Thank you.
Thank you.